Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Palmer, Dutch Doctor, Speed Selling. This is Raging Verbalist number 302, just in case you are counting. By the way, 302 was a very famous engine from Ford, the Boss 302. But anyway, this will be, I think, a fun Raging Verbalist. I think, well, interesting Raging Verbalist. Fun because of how naive people are. I always love seeing that. Raging Verbalist, if you're not aware, I talk about a topic or a subject that interests me. Don't veer off much into politics, stick to my own lanes, and more importantly, just try to answer some interesting thoughts that hit my head. Available on YouTube and Facebook. The Facebook group is Position to Win Book, Position to Win Book, and away we go. All right. So if you haven't heard this yet, I guess you're just not up on some of these things. But today, sports fans, we're going to talk about the NBA betting gambling scandal that's going on. Yesterday or the last couple of days, they went out and busted a bunch of people because there was illicit gambling going on and gambling schemes. I mean, it's such a surprise. I've talked about the proliferation of gambling. Again, I'm not against it. I'm not for it. I'm not any of those things. But all I can tell you is that people are just, they just have no idea what's going on when they sit there and go, well, but John, is it really going to go on and all that? When you have people talking about gambling 24/7, there's lots of money in it. If you go look and see how much money has been bet on some of these things, watching the NFL game on Thursday night on Amazon, they laid out their parlay. I mean, this is stuff that, yes, it was always there. It's funny because, of course, when they now talk about it, they go, well, hey, nobody knew this stuff previously. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everybody who knows gambling knows it. Now we're just getting a lot of other people in it. So with all that dough, what do you think is going to happen? Does money attract the best from human behavior, especially easy money? So what happened is that there was a major federal crackdown resulting in the arrest of 34 individuals, and some of them were quite prominent. We'll talk about those from the NBA and also organized crime. And it was an extensive operation, and it was all about inside sports betting, and then they call it mafia-backed poker schemes. Well, yeah, illegal games. I mean, poker games have been going on for a very long time since the game's been invented. It's just that some people know how to make money with it. Oh, yeah, yeah. So who are some of the key individuals involved? There was Chauncey Billups, who was the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. He's a former NBA champion. He's a Hall of Famer. And he was indicted for both the illegal sports betting and rigged poker games. Oh, what a freaking surprise, right? Then Terry Rozier, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Miami Heat guard accused of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. They always get you on wire fraud and money laundering for allegedly leaking confidential NBA team information and deliberately exiting games to favor underground bets. Now, understand the underground bets were probably made through somebody who's underground, but they exploited some of the dumbos who are running some of the these major systems that are out there, because obviously they're tech people, they're not gambling people. DeMond Jones, former Cleveland Cavaliers player, coach, insider betting, a central figure called the face card in rigged high stakes poker games, and they were run by organized gaming and gambling rings. Wow. Other NBA insiders, but then of course they're criminal affiliates. I like when they say affiliates. It sounds so much better and different. Members of the 4 big crime families in New York. And by the way, if you want to know more about this, I mean, I don't know the guy, but I mean, I've watched him. I mean, go to Michael Francie's YouTube page. Excellent for talking about mob stuff if you're interested in that. About the Bonanos, the Gambinos, the Genoveses, and Lucchese crime families. Guess what? They're all in it. Colombo's, I guess they missed the boat. So that happens. So what were some of the numbers? 34 arrests, 11 states, big deal. Proceeds, they estimate tens of millions of dollars were swindled between December of 22 and March of 24. And, of course, you have to be a little suspect because, was it really tens of millions? Could have been more. Don't know. I mean, but let's face it, people usually don't talk about this stuff. Uh, at least 7 games in the NBA were identified where insider information led to fraudulent prop bets and game manipulation. I learned from my Vegas days, everything's a prop bet. Prop bets are the way people can make money legitimately, but also, it's definitely a fertile ground to go build your, gambling empire. And then, each fraud and money laundering count can carry up to 20 years in prison. So, it's some heavy stuff. People are going to roll over. That's my statement. I'm not surprised. I've already been asked by lots of people who know me, John, are you at all taken aback by this? And I'm like, well, I'm just surprised that it took them this long to figure this stuff was going on. Probably because nobody was. I guess they were looking for it. They're trying to figure it out. But there's all of that going on, especially with sports betting. Sports betting, is why I never bet a dime ever, either on any side with highlight, because man, that is like, whew, you know, too much stuff can go wrong. Now, what was the sports betting scheme? Well, it's simple. The group strategized using confidential injury reports. Hey, we're dealing with, talented people who may or may not play today, which will have an effect on the game itself, but more importantly, on all of the various proposition bets that have exploded out there. I mean, when I was in Vegas, I bet on everything. People would ask me, even now, John, how do you find people who will bet? They're out there. In fact, they're looking for action. And so they would have injury reports, lineups, tanking strategies. Hey, maybe I don't make that shot, or I miss that pass, or all that. I mean, the NBA, got to keep those games close. By the way, notice how close they are. Now, I'm not saying the NBA is doing that, but I'm just saying it's a lot of surprises going on. Now, Rozier and Jones, who were players, allegedly tipped off betting accomplices about rotations of players, injuries, before that information was public. That would be, insider information. Who doesn't want to know this ahead of time? Players intentionally remove themselves from games in at least 3 situations, 3 incidents, to help the under prop bettors hit big payoffs. Little known. Now, this has started to change, but in the NFL at least, the line gets set for the over and under. And that, by the way, that's a line you should always be thinking about. It fits in a lot of different parts of how the world gets put together. So over and under gets talked about in football a lot, and the majority of people bet the over. So the under becomes a very profitable thing. If you're in the NBA, again, I never bet really heavy on the NBA. I did mostly football. Baseball was good too. A little bit of basketball, but basketball wasn't my interest at the time. Was in Vegas. Also wasn't as much betting going on it. Now it's big stuff. So and then of course we have all of China to deal with. But that isn't the issue. Is that if you can get that under bet, because remember, very few times, or not very fewer people bet on the under, just as a mindset. I want to be a positive thinker, right? Yeah, so they do that. And therefore, they did what was called game manipulation. If I miss the shot, even if we're going to win, if I miss the shot, but the under works, I'm not going to get in trouble per se. Well, they did, but I'm not going to get in trouble per se because, well, the under wins, and okay, boo hoo. And then that became a deal that they did, and then bets. This is always fun when I read this. Bets were often disguised using straw bettors to evade detection, and heavily placed at illegal books and illegal sports books. Yeah, well, of course you're not going to walk in with a big giant suitcase of money. I mean, they always talk about that, and that becomes a big publicity stunt. That isn't where most of this stuff happens. Now we get into something that I've kind of experienced years ago. Everything is all wrapped up. And what happened was, that people were sitting there talking. All right, so let me take it from the poker rigging, which I think I've seen this. So high stakes games were rigged using modified self-shuffling machines that relayed real-time card information to co-conspirators. Huh. Wow. I mean, who would have thought that would happen? Victims, often wealthy gamblers, lured by the promise of playing against ex-NBA stars, lost tens of thousands of dollars per night. Who doesn't want to bet, play against somebody who's like a known somebody? That feels pretty good, especially if they're good at telling stories and stuff. The next one I think is just laughable, which is now it's laughable not because I condone it. I mean, I got to do a little disclaimering, but it's like, how do you think this works? So, mafia enforcers extorted and collected debts with threats and, in some cases, violence. Well, I can tell you, collecting bets. I mean, I still have a whole crap load of people who made quote unquote friendly bets with me that, and by the way, you know who you are, who didn't pay up. You chiselers, you welchers. Yeah. So, how are you going to get big dough out of people? And then Jones and Billups, remember these were the guys, used their celebrity to attract high rollers and participate directly, and they received compensation. In fact, Jones wanted a $2,500 advance for a game. Well, that sounds like a pretty good idea. So yeah, let's just put it in a kind of wrap it into a bow. There were a lot of people involved. The timeline is from October. When it was actually unsealed was October 23rd, 2025. And that was shortly after the NBA's new $76 billion broadcasting deal was announced. I'm sure the league is horrified by this because, of course, nobody wants to think that the games are fixed. There's lots of people talking about games being fixed. My father said that the third Super Bowl, which Joe Namath won, was a proof that the mob had fixed that game. I don't think they fixed the game. It was very low scoring. And I just think it was the Jets' day versus Baltimore. By the way, the Jets never did get to that promised land again. Sorry, Jets fan. And this scandal marks one of the largest U.S. professional sports scandals since the legalization of betting started in 2018, echoing patterns seen in earlier league controversies involving organized crime. So that happened. Now, the NBA has placed Billups and Rozier on immediate leave pending further legal developments, while investigations are expected to widen based upon the evidence and participants. And you will see more of them, because what will happen is people are going to roll over and they're going to cut deals with the feds, and away it's going to go. So all I'm going to tell you is that if you want to get to a game that can be legally put together and do it right, then go into, and you're in business, you're in marketing, you're in sales, pick up my book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes 3 to 5 years to realize a position to win. Go check that out. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million physically. You can also go to positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. Now, all I can tell you is that you want to figure out how to find a game that you can play and win consistently. That book will help you. It's also available digitally on Kindle, Nook, and Apple iBooks. All I can tell you is if you're surprised at all of the NBA, that all of this massive money would attract people who would then take advantage of it and then change how they do things, you're fighting human nature. And with that, all I can say is the NBA shoots and hits a foul. And the foul is that human nature will prevail. Always be on the lookout for somebody who's going to try to take advantage of you. Make sure in business that you don't take advantage of people, but in fact, deliver them great value and do what you need to do. And until next time, this is John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling. The Raging Verbalist is now wrapped and done. And all I can tell you is a safe bet to come back next week, and we'll keep following the story. I'll give you an update here or there. All right, take care, everybody, and we'll see you on the next Raging Verbalist.